really excited about today's topic. We have been at several events this spring, been having a lot of conversations with partners, therefore hearing about a lot of their conversations with their customers. And really, our takeaway is there are too many tools out there. They are giving too little protection. And as we kept hearing this, and I think even Gartner supports this. One of their latest pieces of research said an average company might have 43 security tools. And obviously that might be on a higher enterprise side. But I mean, if you think about it, even 5 or 10 or 15 is an awful lot. And if you think about this record spending, if you think about these record numbers of just security tools, we then look at the data that says 9 out of 10 companies were breached last year. And so you look at that and say, okay, something's wrong. What is happening or what is not happening? And we really wanted to take a little bit of time to just talk kind of about this market situation that we're in, that our partners are in. And then we want to talk a little bit about what WhiteDog's doing really in response to that, or maybe how we are leading through that. Because we've got some exciting things going on within WhiteDog right now that are extremely relevant to this conversation. So Brian, I want to turn it over to you and say, what's going on and why doesn't more tools equal better security?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is the maturation of the criminal cyber community. The use of AI, the use of automation, their ability to continue to get better and better, to thwart the tool sets and to thwart the security that we're putting up. I mean, the defenses that we're putting up. So, more tools don't necessarily equate to better security. And I think it's because of this tool set mindset. And it's been that way for a long, long time. WhiteDog now has been in production for over 8 years. Our founder and CEO, 𝗚𝗲𝗿𝗆𝗆, he recognized this exact issue. In fact, WhiteDog was truly founded based upon the frustration of this issue, right? Of the fact that we continued to implement tools in customers' infrastructures and they continued to be attacked. And then we were a part of that response. We were a part of helping them recover. And then as Shaheen always says, then, they kind of got knocked down and got a black eye and a bloody nose. And then we helped them. We put a Band-Aid on it. Then we handed them a bill for $1 million for the next step. And it just didn't feel right. And that was the point where he said, we have to get better. And at that time, what we saw is there is an absolute disconnect between the technology debt, which is something that we talk about, which is implementing all these tools, is to continue to create a mature framework in order to protect the modern enterprise. To your point, it takes a lot of tools, but that single-threaded approach of implementing each one of those tools is a problem because the tools aren't integrated. And not only that, but we talk about this all the time, is that if you're the CMO or the lead technical officer for every one of these security tools, I would challenge our audience, because our partners and our audience, you go to the same RSA, Exchange, PAX 8 conference. We go to the same conferences. What do you hear? Even on main stage, our platinum sponsors stand up and what do they say? You just need our tool. You just need us. Implement us and we'll secure you. And unfortunately, if that was the case, you would only have to buy 1 or 2 tools. You wouldn't have to buy 43, right? So this single-threaded mindset, I think, is the biggest problem of just adding another tool. And the challenge behind that is it creates a massive amount of technical debt. And you hear us talk about this all the time. Managing those tools. So first of all, purchasing them, identifying what's the right tool to put in. There are 4,000 to 6,000 security tools that exist in the market today. Which one do you pick? Which one is complementary to the other tools that you put in place? Which ones integrate well? Which ones are interoperable? And then not only that, but now once I pick that tool, now I've got to integrate the tool, I've got to configure the tool, and I've got to manage the tool. So second component of the technical debt now is the people debt. is the OpEx associated with now hiring to that tool set, and actually having a security team that understands actually what the tools are actually telling us. So the thing is that we see this over and over again, is the management of the single threads and not truly having an understanding of the integration of the tool set and then the correlation associated with respect to what the tool set is telling us, because that's going to lead us to, hey, there's something going on in our environment. And I think, Kirsten, the biggest issue is that, yes, we're just needing to add another tool to plug the hole, but the economic debt of buying all these tools, the technical debt of having to manage all these tools, and they're all single threaded.
Right.
They're not integrated. And I think Shaheen recognized that years and years ago, which is why WhiteDog has brought this integrated, composable, curated security platform to market that has all of the integration, all of the automation, all of the correlation, all of those components are done for you. And that is then brought into our security operations centers, which we have 2 of today, a third in development, from a standpoint of there is an experienced security operations and analyst team that is evaluating the telemetry that's coming in from the WhiteDog platform.
Right. Well, you talked a lot about technology debt, and I think that is so relevant because whether it's 5 tools, 10, or the 43, right, there's a sunk cost, right? And there is an intent from the organization buying it, not that this is going to last us 6 months, but this is the horse we're riding for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And unfortunately, our adversaries adapt much faster than that. And so, you've paid this money, you are under this contract, and then all of a sudden, midway, identity starts being the most vulnerable area, but the solutions that you've got don't factor in that criteria the way that the adversaries are now taking advantage of, but you're stuck. So I still have 2 years more on my contract. So either I eat it or I just hope that.
Well, I'm not hoping.
Doesn't.
It's exactly what we're talking about. What I do is I buy another tool, right? Because economically, I've been trapped in these contracts. Because if you look at most of these companies, they require a 1, 2, 3-year contract. And I've even heard of people saying, well, we signed a 5-year contract. I don't know of a security tool in the market that's got a hard efficacy for a 5-year period of time.
Right.
Without considerable development and change in the back end to adapt to what the cyber community is doing, because the criminal community is absolutely figuring out a way. I just, in the years that I've been in this business and have watched technology grow from infancy now to where it's at today, especially with cybersecurity, is honestly, there's nothing they can't get into. And I think you almost have to take this approach and almost assume that they're in, because I think even if you take it to the level of statecraft, I don't think there's anything that they cannot get into. Especially when you get up into, in a sense, I would think that, the type of governmental approaches that are capable today. But, from that, these folks they continue to add these tool sets to it. And just adding another tool isn't the problem. But when you get tied up into these contracts, again, I think that's one of the huge advantages that we bring to WhiteDog, because as we talk, we're curated and composable, meaning that we can fit into a current set where you might be contracted. So we can fill gaps, but we're consumption based and we have no long-term contracts. But the other aspect for us is that if we find one of our tools isn't as efficient as it was, we change it out. And not only that, but if we also find, which I think is a topic that we'll get to, because we've got some super exciting announcements around our XDR platform and enhancements that we've brought to that. But what we do is that we add the tool, but in adding a tool, what we've done is that tool gets integrated and correlated and becomes composable across our architecture, so that it becomes complementary to, versus I'm adding another piece into the puzzle. We're doing that, but we're doing that with an expertise and full security operations behind it.
Right, right. Well, and I think we talked a little bit earlier about the pace at which these adversaries go, right? We've got ransomware as a service. We've got, I mean, it's everywhere. Um, like you said, there are no areas that are sacred. There aren't any organizations that have zero vulnerabilities. As long as you're plugging in a computer into something or trusting your data with somebody else, right, you're vulnerable. And so the challenge for folks like us is, how do you build out a response that can adapt at the speed necessary? So how do you either pace with, or even in some cases think ahead of the adversaries, and have a service and a solution or a platform that can keep your partners and your customers, let's call it debt-free, right? And so at any given point in time, if we see any service or any tool becoming long in the tooth, or at any given time, if we see a new area that requires deeper protection, that is something that we build in while that plane is flying. We build that in, swap it out, and our passengers are not disrupted. And I think that is the thing that it's like to me so much about WhiteDog, is our response to the market, really making that enterprise grade security accessible, scalable, always current, for our partner community to be able to then, sell, pass on, and support their customers with.
Absolutely. And you started your comment with the word vulnerability. So this is, I think, the biggest aspect of how do we stay ahead of the hacker community? How do we keep one step ahead if we can? Because so many folks implement a security infrastructure, and there's hope. Because what you've done is you've implemented a security infrastructure and it's responsive. It's almost one way. And I'm using this term one way because I was just off the phone with one of our partners in India yesterday. And he came to me and said, Brian, I'm talking to these customers. You're talking about these additional enhancements that you're making to your XDR platform. And this customer said, well, wait a minute. Why does your XDR platform need or have all of these features? Because most of what they're kind of, and he used the term one way. And that was the comment from the customer. These XDR, they have these functions, but they seem to be one way. And one way, again, talks to single threaded. One way also talks to the responsiveness. Now, you talked about response. So let's address response and vulnerability. So those are two of the most key critical points of how we stay ahead. So day zero, whether you're running operating systems or you're running infrastructure, or someone has figured out a way to take advantage of a hole or something in a piece of software that they can take advantage of. Day zero, very tough to defend against, but having the infrastructure in place to be able to respond to that's critical. Second piece is the vulnerabilities. So back to the single threaded component, and my response back to Yash is that's the point. We recognized this 8.5 years ago, is that the single threadedness of XDR, extended detection and response. If I've got extended detection, but I'm single threaded on response, I only respond at the endpoint. So why do we have all of these features in a WhiteDog XDR solution? Because our founder recognized immediately that the paradigm had to shift. The paradigm had to shift from this single threaded approach, this multi-tool approach, to this integration capability, but to have the response capability at all of the vectors. So if we've got an extended detection and we're extending detection through to firewall, through to network, through to ID, through to mail, so I can see these things, but I'm monitor, identify, notify. I don't have response capability. I'm single threaded. I'm one way. So what we've done at WhiteDog is create the platform so that we can address the vectors and have response capability at mail, at DNS, at network, at endpoint, included in our XDR solution. So it is by no means single threaded. The other aspect is so now we've kind of got that response capability across the platform, not single threaded, not one vector. But the other aspect is understanding the vulnerability. And that is one of the key things is how do you stay ahead of these hackers? Is that you've got to understand the vulnerabilities that exist in your environment. And with that data, we then tune the responsiveness of the applications, of the tool sets, of the integrated, interoperable, correlated tool set across the environment. So that vulnerability gives us a roadmap to protect the organization. And so how do we understand that vulnerability? That is the proactive approach. And here's a great place for us to kind of begin to talk about some of the enhancements that we're bringing to the XDR platform. Is that Shaheen and our product team have created something that we are categorizing as our attack surface management platform. Ultimately, I think there will be roughly 7 or 8 capabilities that exist within this platform. What we're super, super excited to announce about within our XDR platform today is we have brought 3 to 4 key to see that there's identity, there's storage, there's network, and there's external. So there's 4 that are critical today that we're bringing to market. So within this platform, what we've done is we've historically done external security posture management. So what is this? This is understanding credentials, information, potential vulnerabilities that we have that are on the dark web. So this has been a part of our XDR platform for many years now. What we've done now is we've extended that now to 3 additional capabilities that are included. Now, this is about understanding our vulnerabilities. This is about understanding what could happen and what might exist that would leave us vulnerable to the criminal community. Understanding this allows us to then tune our responsive infrastructure in order to protect against these things. So the first of all is that we recognized long ago that mail was the #1 attack surface. 93% of threats come from email. Now, the second component of that was 80% of those need to reach out to a command and control session. So whether direct IP or through DNS, they have to reach out to that command and control session in order to implement either access to a machine or download a RAT, random access Trojan, or some code profile that would allow them to take control of that machine or to execute some process. So that's the second key component. Well, the other biggest attack surface that we recognized was identity. I mean, everyone is after the identity so that gives them access. And then from there, they potentially can elevate privilege and move through an environment. So what we've now brought to our XDR platform is identity security posture management. So this is our ability to be able to analyze Active Directory or Entra ID and understand the username profile, the username permissions, the username grouping, the username access, and understand that environment. To understand, did someone just retire an account and give it super user capability? Did someone just elevate privileges on an account that didn't have those privileges? Did an account get created that doesn't fit into a grouping profile? Does an account in a certain group have way too much access that the other statistical folks in that particular group don't have? So it allows us to analyze and then be able to respond actually to these events that might exist in the identity area. So second component is now understanding, so if I do get access, what does my network look like internally? So now let us begin to do network security posture management. And let's begin to analyze and scan the internal network to see if any vulnerabilities exist. If they do, we can identify them and then recommend remediation in order to close those vulnerabilities so that the hacker community can't take advantage of it. So we're doing external posture management, looking from the outside. Now what we've done is we've taken that, extend that to the inside to evaluate, do we have things happening on the inside of our network that are a potential risk? Then we are now then looking at, okay, we've got looking at the network components, identity and access. Now let's look at the data. Back to my point I made earlier, just assume they're in. So from a standpoint of understanding, so this is something that our product team has developed that we are tying to digital or data rights management. And what this is all about in our DRM solution is understanding the security and the storage and what type of data that we have in our environment. And then we're using some AI and analysis to look at those types of data that have been ransomed in the global scene today. And then we can place a value on that information. So the type of information you have that if you were attacked and that data was ransomed, they're going to ask you for $5 million for this. For this data, they might ask you for 10 million. So we can give you a risk profile with respect to the types of data that you have in your organization. And if something were to happen, what's the risk profile associated to that data? And then ultimately down the road with respect to our DRM solution, when it comes to full productivity, when it comes to full production, is that we will give you the capability in that DRM solution to encrypt that data. So single button encryption of that information. So full use capability in your environment within your employees. But if that data were to be exfiltrated, it's encrypted, be almost useless. So for critical attack surface management, security posture approaches to the environment to understand externally, do we have vulnerability? Do we have network vulnerability? Do I have vulnerabilities being created in my identity community? And then ultimately the types of data that I have any vulnerability there? Understanding that vulnerability is a critical part of protecting the environment. And we feel a very important methodology to stay ahead of what the hackers are after.
Well, and as I listen to you describe each of these, I have a couple of thoughts if I'm a consumer or if I'm an organization, right? Obviously, each one of these on their own, I hear you talk about it and it's like, well, of course I need that. Of course I need that. Of course I need that. And there are tools out there that can help you do each one of these things. But if you think of the overhead that just attack surface management, forget everything else that we talked about.
Yeah.
When you think about the overhead, the resources that it requires to do security right is very difficult. And if you're a small business, if you're a medium-sized business, if you're a large business, you're all a target. And so if you're smaller, it doesn't mean you have leeway to do security less right or to cut corners because you're smaller and they don't care as much about you. Every single organization is a target. And so as you think about these things, as you think about the benefit to an organization of having them all together as part of a single platform, that you're not buying each one, you're not integrating each one, you're not supporting each one, that's immense. And I then think about, for our partners that exist today that are already selling this platform, how cool is it as a partner to walk in and say what you just did to me and to this audience and say, guess what? We sold you this XDR platform a year ago, and as of June 1st, guess what else you're going to have, right? That we understand that these threat actors are changing. We understand where new vulnerabilities are. And guess what? You don't have to worry about it. Done. Already done. And that they're not.
And not only that, but guess what? If you're on our platform and you're already paying that fee, you're grandfathered. And guess what? You're going to get all of these improvements at no additional cost.
Right. Where else can you get that? To me, that benefit to a business to just know, I'm good. No, I'm not good. I'm great. Right. And as a partner, to know that they really have kind of this security strike team, helping deliver this service to their customers so that they know that they are offering a premium security service, however much or little that customer needs or wants of this service. But that on the back end, we're the ones that are making sure it's current. We're the ones that making sure it adapts. We're the ones that making sure all of these things are correlated. And what a burden that takes off to deliver the type of security service that anybody would want to build if they could on their own.
Yeah, it was, you and I, we were both at an Exchange conference. It was late last year, and there was a lot of Gartner kind of statistics that were quoted, but the one that really kind of stuck with me was that for small, medium business and even medium business, large business, and that was up to like 500 to 750 employees, which is a decent sized company. But the statistic was kind of scary because in that size company, there was 0.6 persons, engineer dedicated to security. So not even one security person. And if you think about the average security engineer, and I'm being very conservative, 65, 70, maybe to $110,000 a year for that engineer, for someone that really knows what they're doing. And then the cost associated to experience goes up even after that with respect to the right person. Very hard to get, very hard to keep. But if you look at the cost associated with implementing a managed, curated, composed solution, it's about the cost of an engineer, but we take that technology debt away. So for those companies that have a half an engineer or really a challenged IT staff, Kirsten, this is almost impossible for them to implement. To implement 15, 20, 30 tools and have 0.6 people try to manage that, it's almost impossible.
Well, I can from virtually far away, I sense the energy that you have around this and the excitement. And I tell people this about WhiteDog. Obviously, we're in business. We want to grow. We want to expand our services and expand our footprint. But there is a part of this that feels like a public service to me, because it is so clear the challenge and the risk that organizations out there face. And it is so difficult for any one organization to be able to feel confident that they are investing in the right things and protecting their assets the way they need to. And so I love what we do because, we're really able to help businesses stay in business and stay focused on what it is they need to do. We're able to help partners, expand their service portfolio and really add that value to organizations that need to care about security. So I love that we were able to talk about these XDR enhancements. And it's just such a perfect time and a perfect example to really showcase how we adapt and grow and change over the course of time as things dictate. So it was a great opportunity to share that. And Brian, thank you for your sharing, for your examples, and obviously for any partner that is listening that if any of this kind of perked up your ears, or if you thought, wow, I could use some of this, I could use all of this, absolutely get in touch with us. We can help you evaluate what you're doing today. We can help you chart a course for how you might integrate WhiteDog into your business and expand that to your customers. This is not a long runway to get to be able to implement this. We've got a 30-day onboarding guarantee. So this is something that if you're interested, we can have you up and running, and we can have you delivering services by summer to your customers. So, take the chance, take the opportunity, at least have the conversation and see what it might be able to do for your business.
And you bring up a point for me that is, I love what we're doing, because I love to walk into the SOC and have the guys go, oh man, we just saved someone's bacon last night, right? 2 a.m., 50 machines got encrypted and we stopped it in 6 minutes. I mean, it's amazing to hear. We just helped someone. And then on the flip side, the heartbreak is just last night, I'm on the phone with a company that were referred to us by a customer. They were attacked. And just the frustration and the stress in their voice with respect to, they're shut down. And we can help them, and we are helping them. And you're right, it feels good. But I think for our partner community, this company was built to help you grow. This company was built to help you be a greater value to your customer. And we have partners that are taking advantage of that and doing just that. And that's the other fun piece for me, as well as interacting with our partner community and watching them grow their business and becoming more efficient and more profitable, which is the biggest piece is how do we grow your business? How do we help you find new markets? And how do we help you become and be a better value to your existing customer base? It's what we do. And it's feel good. It is. It just feels good.
Well, on that happy note, we're going to wrap
Yeah.
for May. Thank you, Brian. This was a great conversation.
No, thank you.
And thanks, Al, for joining us. We hope to hear from some of you soon.